So today I want to talk about something that a lot of industrial companies struggle with, and that is the fact that the way their buyers buy has changed dramatically.
All right, you Industrial Talk podcast listeners, that is a gentleman by the name of Douglas Burdett. He is the founder of Artillery Marketing, and he is the host of the Marketing Book podcast. And you know what he's going to be talking about? Yeah, that's right. That's right. Marketing solutions for you, the industrial professional. You got to listen to this particular podcast because he is dropping truth bombs. So here he is, Douglas Burdett.
Welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast with Scott McKenzie. Scott is a passionate industry professional dedicated to transferring cutting-edge, industry-focused innovations and trends while highlighting the men and women who keep the world moving. So put on your hard hat, grab your work boots, and let's go.
All right, let's go. Welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast. So glad that you are here. My name is Scott McKenzie. You know that. This platform, Industrial Talk Podcast, is dedicated and focused on you, the industrial professional, the industrial company, and your success. Everything that we do here, the content that is created here, the classes that we provide, the marketing services that we provide, all geared to you and your success. We got a great interview. You heard it in the old teaser. So let's get going. And thank you again for joining. Yeah, I got to tell you, man, I'm really excited about this interview as well. Douglas is, for lack of a better term, he's an innovator. He is a marketing innovator. He's got a podcast out there, and he gets to interview the best of marketing people and their books. He gets to talk to them. What a great deal. What a great gig. And then, of course, he's an innovator, and he's on fire. He's on fire with this particular interview. And so I don't really have much else to say except you, as a professional, need to be listening to this podcast. You go out to industrialtalk.com, you find this podcast, you download this podcast, and I tell you right now, Douglas will make you a better business because he's great, man. He's a great guy. So anyway, here's Douglas Burdett. He is, once again, the founder of Artillery Marketing and the host of the Marketing Book podcast. So you industrial juggernauts out there, here he is, and enjoy the interview. All right, welcome, Douglas. How are you doing today? Welcome to the Industrial Talk podcast. Good to
Great
have
to
you
be here, and I'm better now that I'm talking to you.
That's the right attitude I want to bring to this podcast. Listeners hear about that. He's with Artillery Marketing, which is a mouthful, and his last name is Burdett, like cadet. So that's Douglas Burdett with Artillery Marketing. All right, I've been out on your LinkedIn page. You got quite a stat card out there. Give us a little background into who you are and what you're all about.
Sure. Well, I've got this marketing agency in Virginia that works with manufacturers, industrial companies, and started that a number of years ago. Let's go the other direction. So I was in the Army for 3 years overseas. I was a field artillery officer. I got out, got an MBA, and then said, I want to go be an ad man. I went off to New York City, and I worked at some of the biggest ad agencies in the world. So I was there for a number of years, met the girl of my dreams. Our first child was born in Manhattan. Then we moved to Virginia and bought cars, stuff like that. And then worked for an agency for 4 years, started my thing in 2001. And I had a real traditional advertising background. My firm, Artillery, started out real traditional advertising, and then the whole world changed. It was kind of like a travel agent 25 years ago going, what's this internet thing people are talking about? And why are the airlines not giving us commissions anymore? So kind of knocked around and figured out what the next move was. And along the way, read a book by a guy named David Merriman Scott called The New Rules of Marketing and PR, and then saw where the world was going in terms of marketing and sales and said, man, I love that book. I'm going to keep reading books. And I've gotten another bite at the career apple. And so what we're doing with these clients is a lot of internet marketing, creating content to turn their websites into really magnetize their websites full of information that their customers love, which doesn't always mean talking about the client's products, although you need information on a website. But if you've got stuff that's helpful, entertaining, educational, that makes their life better and demonstrates that you understand what's keeping them up at night, you will win. You will win. So that's what's going on. The other thing that the way I met you was through Todd Hockenberry, our mutual friend, who's I guess been a past guest on your show.
He has.
Okay, so I told you I read that book years ago, and
hey,
throughout
I'm
my
gonna
career.
stop you, Douglas, real quick for you listeners out there. Let's just sort of make sure you understand. He's got a podcast called the Marketing Book Podcast. So he pretty much has all of the marketing books ever produced and are being produced go through his door, and so he has the latest and greatest information on marketing. So that puts, he wasn't going to say that, but you need to know that because he is quite the marketing guy. Okay, go ahead back to Todd.
So Todd, what happened was I'd always read books at kind of key points in my career. And I can remember looking back a couple times going, man, I read the right book at the right time and it changed everything. So when I was knocking around and I told you about that book, that was at a time in my life where I felt like my world was changing and my career needed to change. And there's a lot more listeners you have that are probably can acknowledge exactly what's going to happen. That sort of thing's only going to happen more in the future. And I felt like I was growing dinosaur scales on my skin. I was turning into a dinosaur.
Yeah.
And it really, really bothered me more than perhaps it did for other people. I went off in that direction and I kept reading the books and reading, new marketing and sales books, which I think are, really very interesting. I'm lucky to be in this line of work that I find so interesting. And it got to the point where it got weird, Scott, where I would go to a conference and I knew an author would be there and I would have already read their book on a Kindle. I would buy a hard copy, put it in the suitcase, fly to the conference just to get their autograph. Now, hey, don't judge. Some people collect.
No judging. I'm just good. I'm impressed.
Some people like you collect signed, New Orleans Saints memorabilia. I collect signed autograph. I collect autograph sales and marketing books. And so what I did was about four and a half years ago, I said, I'm going to start a podcast and I'm going to interview authors of these new marketing and sales books. And I had met a number of the first 10 or so and it started the podcast. It's called the Marketing Book Podcast. And then one day, Scott, after about the 10th interview, it dawned on me, I'm actually going to have to read every one of these damn books before the interview.
But you do.
But I do, and
you do.
It's been good for me. My Scotch bill has plummeted, and it's really been helpful for clients and for me. I love ideas and learning new things, and I love being able to help people. And so now I go around and I'll give a talk to groups about, how to grow your manufacturing industrial company based on over 200 marketing and sales books or things along that line where I'm able to pull out certain things that they find really helpful. So it's sort of my occupational hobby. I try not to spend too much time during the work here, even though I'm working for the man. And, but
I thought you were the man.
I am, but hardest boss I ever had. But anyway, that's something I started a while back, and I just love doing it. And now it's got listeners in 150 countries around the world. And LinkedIn named it as one of 10 podcasts that will make you a better marketer. Forbes named it as one of 11 podcasts that will keep you in the know. And we've got 1 million downloads, and it's just a labor of love. I just love helping people, but deep down inside, I kind of hated not having a sense of what's going on in this field that is changing a lot. And it's not the only field that's changing a lot, but it is one, and it's driven by all this technology and the changing way that people can buy.
Okay, so I'm putting on my hat. I'm putting my industrial cap. I don't have 1 million downloads. Let's put it that way.
You will.
Well, I'm always focused on quality, not quantity.
Oh, I know. It's really about the engagement with your audience, not the numbers. I just threw that number out there to say
to impress me. That's exactly what I did. It's like a fellow podcaster. That's an impressive number. Okay, so I've got
don't ask me if I'm making a lot of money on the podcast because everyone's like, no, it's kind of not why I started. I started it because I just love doing this. Yes, there's been indirect, but that's not why I'm doing it. So there you go.
But here's the reality. So I've got my CEO cap on, right?
Sure. Good.
Yeah. It's covering up my bald head. And why I started the podcast was the ability to be able to change the conversation that I would have with other companies. Instead of me, hi, I'm Scott McKenzie with Acme, and we do ditch digging, I can say, hey, I'm Scott McKenzie with Industrial Talk, and I want to talk to you about the challenges that you are experiencing in your business, and I think the listeners want to hear about it. That to me was this aha moment of value, this value that you could bring to the market and recognize that industry, just the essence of industry, are innovators and they're changing the world. But that message is not getting out because, well, it's industry. Who wants to listen to that? I find that people do want to listen to it. And in the case of you and marketing, it's just blown my mind, Douglas, because there is so much that can happen within the industrial world that nobody knows about, that they can deploy today and be a better company tomorrow.
Yes, and some are.
Some. If you look at the pie, it's
a small number. But what just tickles me to death, as they say down there in New Orleans, is so many industrial companies and particularly manufacturers that deep down inside they want to be perceived as innovative. And and the way they are selling is not terribly innovative.
Not even close.
There was a book on the podcast, and of course I'm going to say that about 100 more times, but there was a book on the podcast called Sales Differentiation by Lee Salz, and it was about differentiating your company. And he said, the first third of the book, he goes, there's some things you can do to differentiate your products and things about your company. Sure. And you should do those things. But the biggest differentiator any company has is the way they sell.
Yep. Yeah. And we're going to, in the second half, we're going to start talking a little bit about that. Well, I want to really dive into the tactics, because one of the challenges that I'm constantly faced, first off, there's a necessity to educate when it comes to podcasts. What's this about? Why would I want to do this? Blah, 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 blah. But I'm always of the position, Douglas, that if you're not engaged, if you're not trying to figure out how to leverage this digital world we're living in and the speed at which this technology is changing, you're missing opportunity, and your competition's going to sit there and go scoop it up, and you're going to go by the way of the dodo if you're not engaged.
Absolutely. And that's why you may have seen on our homepage of our website, it said, manufacturers, how many sales are you missing out on where you didn't even know you were in the race? That's just pervasive now. They don't even know they're being considered.
No, it's frightening, but it opens up opportunities. So you got to figure that out. If that's the reality, you got to figure it out. You got out on artillerymarketing.com. I'm a big data guy. I love data. I love to look into that, because that sort of communicates your position. If you're, like SEO. So I interviewed a gentleman by the name of Rich Zhang, and we were talking about data and realizing that if you're not on the front page, the first page of your search results, forget it. And if you're not the top three, also forget it. You're missing out on a lot of opportunities. I like this one. 89% of B2B purchases start with an internet search. 89%.
Yes.
Gulp.
And, that was put there. There were all kinds of stats we could put there. We just put 3 on there just to try to, in the most gentle, loving way, grab the lapels of these companies and say the way your buyers buy has changed.
Yeah.
And what we'll then hear is we'll say, well, that may be true, Douglas, but you see, our customers are what? I'll give you a hint. It starts with a D. Our customers are different. You see, Douglas, our customers don't go onto the Google. They just call us up when they need something.
Interweb.
Yeah, they don't go on the internets. And and then we'll have another conversation where I'll say, let's talk about the changing way that people buy. Okay, so when I was a kid and my dad wanted to buy a new car, I need you to role play with me here for just a second.
I will.
where do you think was one of the first places my dad would go to get information about buying a new car?
I would go to the dealership and sort of wander around and pick the brains of the salespeople there. That's what I would do.
You get an A+.
Thank you,
Mr. Scott. And he would go there, at which point, so that was kind of the beginning of his research. And right out of the way, he was engaging with a salesperson, and then that salesperson could guide or strong arm him along his purchase. It was called the era of information asymmetry, where the seller had the info and the buyer wanted it. And so there were secrets. He could hold it. I got to go talk to the sales manager.
Oh, God.
True for any kind of purchasing. Okay, so fast forward to a couple years ago where my wife wanted to go buy a new car. Now, where do you think, this is just take a wild guess, where do you think the absolute last place she went to get her information?
Dealership. I do not. In fact, I drive purposely away from the dealership, and I'm not even buying a car. I might be just getting a hamburger.
It's baked into our buying DNA now, this suspicion of marketing and sales. And actually, Scott, your answer was correct, but the last place she went for information was her husband. She waited until I was out of town at a Navy football game. I went to it with a friend, and the cell phone coverage was very light, and my phone was running out of battery, and I started getting these text messages saying, "Is this number a good monthly payment?" I was like, "Whoa, what are you talking about?" So she knew exactly what she was doing. She's just very smart. So anyway, there are no more secrets. Your customers can get almost any information. In fact, there was another book on the podcast recently called Marketing Rebellion by Mark Schaefer, and he talked about a study from 10 years ago. I think it was by McKinsey. And they talked about how everything that someone is hearing about you and your company, think of it as a pie, back to our love of pies, 2/3 of that is information from other people. Only 1/3 of that information is coming from the company. You don't control the information about your company anymore. We had somebody we were talking to just last week saying, the friend of one of our clients, he goes, for my aviation company, I want to control the message. And we're like, brother, you can't control that message.
That is a powerful, I'm writing that one down just because that is very.
So, as a result, it's making companies have to be more transparent. They can't, if you're a guitar player and you get on United and they smash your guitar, I see a guitar behind you, you're going to start singing United Breaks Guitars, and it's going to drop your United's stock price 10%. And do the math. And this is a story I'm talking about, which happened where United just pissed off a passenger, and they destroyed his guitar. He's a professional musician. He needed $3,000 to get it repaired, and they said no. So he tried to do everything he could to get it repaired. He finally just wrote a really good song, because unfortunately for them, he's a very good songwriter. He wrote this song called United Breaks Guitars, and within just a couple of days, their stock price, we're talking billions, was crushed by this. And that's such a great example of, in the past, it was buyer beware. You may have heard the expression caveat emptor. You buy a bad roofing job.
I don't even know how to spell it.
Or you buy something wrong. Hey, that's on you. That's your problem. You bought that snake oil song, sucker. Now that's completely over. It's called what they call caveat venditor. Let the buyer beware, because even if you have a customer that was not treated badly, you've got to be ready for them to start telling the world, because everybody has a megaphone to share what their experience was with your company, what your prices were, and if they treated you badly. So that's why I say, the car thing and the way Dad bought, there's a lot of industrial companies that still are thinking deep down inside, well, then when the customer needs something, they call us. No, they're not.
No, they're not. I'm telling you right now, we've got to take a break, Douglas. We were talking to Douglas Burdett. He's dropping some really incredible insights with artillerymarketing.com. And we're going to break. We're going to come back. We're going to get a little tactical. So stick with the Industrial Talk Podcast. We will be right back.
You're listening to the Industrial Talk Podcast Network.
There is only one place I go when I'm interested in learning about reliability, asset management, and maintenance, and that is reliabilityweb.com. Their platform, their focus, their commitment to reliability is second to none. They want to build a culture of reliability in your organization, and they provide the content to support that. Go out to reliabilityweb.com, reach out to them. You will not be disappointed. If you're an asset management, maintenance, a reliability professional, this is the only place for you to go. That's reliabilityweb.com. They're building a culture of reliability. All right, welcome back to the Industrial Talk podcast. Of course, we're talking with Douglas Burdett with Artillery Marketing, and I want you industrial professionals and companies out there to take note, because this is important stuff. You have got to consider looking into marketing, branding, sales, leveraging the digital world that we live in today, and figure that out. If you don't, your competition will, and then you're going to be retired, for lack of a better term. Right, Doug? Liz? I don't want to call you Doug, but I know. Sorry about that, Douglas.
It's fine.
No,
I answered
I don't want to be. Yeah, but
my brothers call me worse. So.
Anyway, so let's get into some tactics. Okay, so I'm an industrial person. I said, yep, I'm hearing Douglas, and he's hitting me right between the eyes with some great information, and I want to get started. Talk to me. Let's go down those points that we need to highlight for these listeners.
Okay, so can I start with something they probably don't want to hear? And when I say this to groups of industrial companies or manufacturers at a talk, I'm always afraid I'm going to get thrown off the stage for saying
we're tough.
I'm about
We're
to say.
tough. Come
You
on.
are. You
We're
know,
tough.
with folks like your listeners, at least I know where I stand all the time. They're very straightforward, but I want to say something that may hurt, but stop talking about your products first. If you don't take anything else away from what we talk about today, stop talking about your products first.
Okay. I got to step in. So if I'm not talking about my product, what am I talking about? What do I do? That's how I've been trained. That's how I've been programmed. I come in and say, here's my value proposition, and the product is spectacular. We innovate, blah, blah, blah. What do I do?
Well, if you want to get found online, you want to publish information that solves the problem or addresses the issues that is keeping your customers up at night. Okay, but let's back up.
Yeah.
A lot of these companies, industrial companies, manufacturers, they are extremely product focused. They make a product in many instances, and they make, for the most part, really, really good products. In fact, many of them are over-engineered. And the people that work for those companies are, I think, justifiably proud of those products. But most of the discussion is about the product. And the problem with that is that until you can show your customers that you care about them, they're not going to care about you. So that's why, even in a sales situation, a lot of the salespeople listening to this will probably grasp this perhaps more quickly. But if you just go in and start talking about your products, people aren't really interested. What they're interested in is themselves and solving their problems. They want to have less downtime. They want to make more money for their company. They want to save bottom line costs. They want to avoid a catastrophe in the future. We were just talking about reliability during the break. They actually don't want to buy the cheapest product if their career and their business is on the line. Okay, so if you go in and talk about some of those things first, you're going to get them engaged, and they're going to be interested because that appeals to their primal caveman brain. That's what they're interested in. Now, your product may actually be able to help with some of those things, but only until you're able to demonstrate to them that you understand them and you can help them solve those big problems. They're not really going to be that interested in taking a call with you or sitting through a product demo. In fact, back to the discussion we were having about the way Dad bought the cars versus my wife. There is another stat, I think it's on our website there, of those three, that in a B2B situation, business to business, the buyer is at least 60% through their purchase process before they first reach out to a vendor. They've got a whole lot of stuff going on, and that's the minimum. Forrester puts that number at 90%. Of course, it varies by industry and product and so forth, but they are way, way far along. Yeah. And why do they put off talking to a vendor? Why do they put off first talking to a salesperson for so long? Because they can. Just like you don't want to even drive by the dealership, they don't want to have to engage with some company that thinks going to sell to them. But if you on your website can make yourself a little bit better known and liked and trusted and seem a little more human, they're going to be more inclined to want to call you up and say, hey, I watched your video. I listened to your podcast. I read these articles and they're really, really helpful. Can I talk to you about what we're kind of wrestling with? Now, you see how that language is a little bit different from, I need a quote. I know exactly what I want to buy because I've educated myself with all the information from your competitors. I'm just double checking prices now. And so these buyers are, to a lot of companies, industrial companies, they think they're ninjas. They're suddenly appearing out of the dark at the last minute, ready to beat you up on price because they don't have to go to you for a lot of the information as they're doing their research. And boy, are they doing research, and they're doing it online. This week, I attended a great webinar by my friends at ThomasNet. And even then ThomasNet is a great resource for speccing a lot of jobs and getting lots of information. And even they were saying, especially with these younger buyers, and I think 40% of them are now millennials, these industrial companies, they're going to Google first. And they want to get that information. So how do you get on Google? Again, back to tactics. This is one that we actually wrote a story about, just a fictional, like a fable, but it was about how company after company, they're about to go out of business. They don't have any money. There's a specific company I know of, a friend of mine that was in this situation. He didn't even have any money left for marketing and sales, all this sort of thing. And they wanted him to declare bankruptcy, but he didn't want to because he didn't want to lose his house. So what he did is he just started on his website answering every question they'd ever gotten from a customer. So each one was a different page. They're called blog articles, but don't worry about it. It's just a different page in reverse chronological order on your site. So it was like, what does this widget cost? That's still one of the most, what does a widget cost? I'm making up because we don't need to get into line of work he was in. What's the difference between this titanium versus this aluminum widget? Every question they ever gotten from a salesperson, they just put a short article on their website that answered it. Within a year, he was one of the top websites for that field, turned his business around. And what happened was people were getting the information and they were calling him up, and he noticed that their conversions were much higher if they knew that the customers had been on several pages of their website educating themselves. So I know this sounds crazy for an industrial company, but years ago, I was on the vestry of my church, and I got my ticket to heaven, and I'm never going to do it again. No, I'm just kidding. But, serving on a vestry has its pluses and minuses.
I'm getting ready to interrupt that down. Douglas, I don't even know how to spell vestry, but I'm just going to fake it.
But anyway, it's just like serving on a board, and it was, but anyway, so they keep saying, hey, can you come back on the vestry? And the one thing I learned how to do when I served on that was how to say no. So, but I said, look, I'll come back. Several years later, they said, well, can you come at our vestry retreat at the beginning of the year and just talk to us about social media and internet marketing, all that sort of thing. So I did. And I came in and I gave them a little talk, and I'm not a church expert, but I said, look, think of it this way. Think about how when Gutenberg first came out with the press in 1440 and suddenly things could be printed. Think about how that just, in the 100 years after that, until the 20th century, there were more wars than there had ever been in Europe. There was more struggle, economic, it was just crazy. And because all this information was suddenly out there. So I said, look, in the old days, meaning 5 years ago, when somebody wanted to check out your church, what did they have to do? Well, they kind of had to come to a service, maybe meet a few people and go to the coffee and get a name tag and, all that sort of thing. And then just
get the donuts.
Exactly. Okay. They don't have to do that anymore. It's nice if they do. You've got to do one thing before that. You've got to share as much of your church with your people that are interested in kind of checking you out so they can decide, okay, I think I want to go visit these guys. In other words, oh, wow, I got to watch a sermon. I got to meet some people. I got to learn about kind of what they do. I kind of got to get a sense of these folks. I think I may go visit them. That is the exact same thing that industrial companies, the smart ones, are starting to do. They're like, well, let's let people meet us. Now, again, you don't want to be talking just about yourself, but if you can demonstrate, wow, that's really helpful, let's do it. And to close, Scott, on a personal note, uh, sadly, this works. My wife is one of those horse people that has horses and she competes.
Oh, God.
Um,
Congratulations.
and yeah, well, thank you. Well, she used to be a sailboat racer. So if there's an even more expensive hobby she can go into,
All right. Good.
please don't tell me. And yes, I know a heroin addiction would probably be cheaper. But anyway, but I don't want that. So,
There you go.
but she, I don't know how anybody would try to reach her. She's not, she doesn't watch television. She listens to satellite radio. But she's really into this this passion she has, just like a golfer or a motorcyclist or a sailor. All these people that have these deep interests. And so what she's doing is she's going online trying to figure out answers to problems, like how to make sure the saddle fits better. How do you size that? Apparently that's a problem for horse people. You get the wrong size saddle, or the horse is sick, or the different kinds of feed, or your horse is injured, or how do I compete better? So she's going and searching for all this stuff. Now, the really smart companies that want to sell to a woman like her, let's say it's a saddle company. Yeah, they've got all their saddles on their website, but what they're doing is they're producing information that's helpful for a competitive equestrian like her. So it's like tips on how to train your horse better, how to keep your horse healthy, how to make sure your saddle fits right, whether you buy it from us or not. Well, the next thing you know, she's on their websites, she's downloading their these ebooks they offer. She's signing up for their newsletters. Why? Because that newsletter, again, it's not all about their saddles. It's about how she can be a better competitor. Well, long story short, Scott, it's working. And I know that because all those companies are on the monthly credit card statement. I wish I could tell you it's different, but that is exactly how she does it. And that's how they're taking our money.
But it is. It's truth. Let's put it that way. And one of the questions I have, because you're in the world of marketing, is that there is this whole digital component. It can be quite voluminous. It could be quite
it's overwhelming. It really
daunting.
Is terrifying. Yes.
And what I
think it's overwhelming, there is nothing wrong with you, because it is. I mean, look, I'm reading a book every week and doing lots of other stuff, and I'm just trying to keep up.
Yeah. And so for me, I've tried to, distill it down into some easily consumable bites, and not get 90% of my efforts are going to go into this one box that I say, yeah, I can do that. 10% of my efforts are going to be in this sort of experimental range, because technology is changing so rapidly. I still have to sort of keep my toe into the experimental side, but if I continue to just sort of dance around an industrial company, this is what happens. I will never get anything done, because there's always this new shiny object out there, new thing twinkling in my eye. But it does not preclude, or it does not eliminate the necessity to do some sort of your typical marketing, you've got to do public relations, you got to do all of that, but there's a necessity to align it all up. You can't have just, here's our public relations side, and we go out over here, and then here's our digital side, and we go over this way. There has to be some continuity, some cogent strategies that go through that. Is that right?
Absolutely. And what happens is companies are doing a lot of random acts of marketing. So, here it is this time of year, people are maybe doing some things to their lawn or whatever. It's like throwing a certain kind of seed in one part and maybe some fertilizer over there and maybe some weed killer over here and crabgrass preventer over there. And you can only imagine the kind of results they're getting. But let me suggest one thing that the fastest growing, most profitable companies are doing, those that don't even do a whole lot of marketing or what we think of as sort of this megaphone of interruptive. Yeah. See, in the old days, you had more of a captive audience, you could interrupt them. Now you have to be what people, you could interrupt what people were interested in. Now you have to be what people are interested in. Okay. So, The secret sauce of all of this, well, of course, there's no secret sauce in digital marketing, and don't let any
No,
marketing or agency people tell you
there
that.
is
It's not.
not.
It's become very complicated. It's become very fast changing, and you used to be able to do, say maybe on one hand you could do a variety of tactics, and it worked beautifully. And advertising in certain instances was
Yep.
very powerful. Take it from a former New York ad guy. But now it's just become much more complicated, probably more like what your CPAs are doing. There's just a lot of stuff they got to keep track of.
Yep.
But the secret sauce is having deep insights into your buyer's life,
Yeah.
particularly what's going on in their world before they get to you. Okay. So let me give you an example. A little quick story. I'm convinced there's three kinds of companies, and one of them is companies that are very focused on their products themselves, their operations, their own people. A lot of industrial companies out there. I think the majority of companies
Yep.
are like that.
They
And
are.
deep down inside, that's an observation, not a criticism. Okay, but they're very focused on themselves.
Yep.
There's another sliver of companies out there, percentage, and they are obsessed with their competition. And they won't admit this, but most of the strategic decisions they make are driven by what their competition are doing.
Yep.
Okay, the third kind of company, the ones that are growing the fastest and the most profitable, pay more attention to their customers than they do to their competition and their own operations. Now, it doesn't mean they don't pay attention to those first two, but they pay more attention to their customers. Let me ask you a question,
Yep.
Scott. Which one of those three do you think is Amazon?
Oh, it's all customer. You
They
bet.
are
I
obsessed.
guarantee it is.
So Jeff Bezos, apparently, so the story goes, I've seen this several times in different places. He goes to a meeting in the conference rooms at their buildings. He wants an empty chair at the conference room table, regardless of how many of his executives are there. And the reason why is because he wants to point at it, because that's the chair of the customer. Now, these people are all getting ready for these meetings with the big boss. And then what happens now is during the meetings, he'll say, no, 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 whoa, whoa, whoa. You're forgetting about something. He's just pointing at an empty chair. Then all these people prepare for these meetings and they're going, oh, dang it. You know what? The boss, he's going to point at that damn chair. Oh, I completely forgot about the customer. Even a company like that, it's tough to keep focused on your customers. But what happens is the most successful ones are the ones that are talking to them on a regular basis. And it doesn't mean and I'm not talking about salespeople talking to them. Those guys have a very special job and they're very focused on meeting quota. The most successful companies are the ones that are going out there and they're getting insights into what their customers life is like. And there's one of my favorite books on the podcast out of the first 200 or so is called Buyer Personas by Adele Ravella. And basically it has to do with just these 5 insights that you need to have about your customers. And if you understand those 5 insights, and most of them have to do with before they come to you, you will have an unfair advantage. And we see this with clients all the time, where when we start with a new client, one thing we say to them, partly to smoke them out, is we say, we need to talk to your customers and we want to do interviews. And if they don't want us talking to their customers, there's going to be other problems.
Yeah.
But we want to ask them. It's a 30-minute conversation, and even if you don't read her book, go to buyerpersonas.com and download, without registration necessary, an ebook on the 5 rings of insight. If any company can go and just read up on that and understand it, it's going to help their marketing. It's going to help their sales. It's going to help them kind of figure out what kind of content they should be writing about. But it's going to help your operations. It's going to help you come up with new services and ideas just by talking to your customer. And there have been several books about how just having this ongoing structured conversation with your customers. I wish I could tell you it's more complicated than that. It's really hard for companies to do, but that is the thing that just keeps coming up over and over. And if I could just urge companies to do that, go to her website, download that one short ebook, and try to learn about the 5 rings of insight, and it'll transform your company. And we'll go off and do this for clients, and they'll come back and they'll say 2 things, which is funny to us, but it's revealing. One is they'll say, gosh, you guys nailed our customers. You really understand them. Well, all we have to do is talk to them. And the second thing is they'll say, gosh, you know what? Our heads are down. We're working hard. We're trying to take care of our customers. We forgot about what goes on in their world long before they get to us.
That's a powerful statement. Okay, we're going to have to take a break right now. We've talked about listen up, listeners. Listen up, listeners. Stop promoting your product first. It's a good product. It's fantastic, innovative, great. Stop talking about that first and shift it and figure out and know your customer. That's the secret sauce. And it is so true. It is so true. You know what I like to do? I use a product called Feedly.
Oh, I do too. I
Yeah,
love it.
it's a great
That's
product.
a great tool for salespeople too.
Thank you very much. And I'll sit there and I'll download. I'll say, well, that's a great looking article. Let me download it and send it to somebody. Hey, I was just thinking about you.
I was just talking to him yesterday. Yeah. And you're just sending them some helpful information. And you know what you're not saying, Scott? Hey, did you decide if you want to buy or not? Did you decide if you want to buy or not?
Exactly correct. Hey, I just remembered what we talked about. Here's an article. Maybe it will help you or not. It's right there. And it's there.
Nobody does that.
I know. That's fantastic. All right, you industrial listeners out there, we need to get a hold of Douglas Burdett with Artillery Marketing, but we've got to take a break. Thank you very much for joining the Industrial Talk Podcast. We will be right back.
You're listening to the Industrial Talk Podcast Network.
All right, you industrial companies out there, did you know 75% of all users do not click past the first page of their search engine results? 75%. I'm one of them. 60% of all users click on the top 3 websites in their results. I'm also one of those. So bluntly stated, if you're not focused on SEO and optimizing your website with technology that makes you a success, you're missing out on opportunity. I use Bliss Drive. They're a wonderful team that is passionate about you, your success, and they stay current in this world of SEO. So if you want to get noticed, it's SEO. If you want to gain more leads, it's SEO. If you want to generate more revenue, it's SEO. And if you want to stand out in this world of sameness, industrial sameness, it's SEO. Bliss Drive is the company for you. Go to blissdrive.com, find out more. They're wonderful. You will not be disappointed. All right, welcome back to the Industrial Talk Podcast. I am just having a dandy time talking to Douglas Burdett with Artillery Marketing. And I'm telling you guys, you listeners out there, you need to connect with them. There's one more point that you wanted to bring up, and I believe it has to do with buyers and how they buy today. That was the third point.
Yeah, well, we touched on that in the beginning, but sometimes I'll say to folks, I'll describe how people are buying, like I did earlier about my dad versus my wife, and how people want to avoid marketing messages. It's easier and easier to avoid unwanted calls, and be honest, Scott, have you ever not picked up the phone because you could see it was a
You want to know my voice message? You want to know what my voice message is?
What does it say? If it's good, I'm stealing it.
Yeah, it is. It is. And in fact, you could call it and listen to it and steal away. I just said, if I don't know your number and you don't leave a message, I'm not calling you back. Because it is. I took, I did some stuff with the government and all this stuff, putting my industrial talk and getting it, trademarked, right?
Uh-huh.
And I was getting calls because now all of a sudden that's public information.
Oh,
and I just call.
Like if you get a speeding ticket and all the attorneys start trying to befriend you.
Yeah. Boom, boom, boom.
I know
boom,
you've never
boom,
got
and
a
it just
speeding
keep on
ticket.
going. And I just said, that's it. I'm done. If I don't know that number, you don't leave a message, I'm not calling you back. Have a great day.
Oh, it's terrible. Unfortunately, we can't answer the phone anymore. I've got caller ID, and if I could see it's a client or somebody that I know, I'll answer it. But of course, now it's even weirder because it's not just robocalls. I pick up the phone and there's nobody there. I mean, the least they could do is breathe heavily and kind of excite me.
I'm just like, not going to do it. Google phone, baby. Google phone.
So the way people buy has changed, and people can avoid your unwanted marketing messages. And gosh, now I forgot what I was going to say. So I'll talk about how people want to do their own research. They don't want to talk to the salespeople. And I got all kinds of studies that show you that is not the primary place they want to go for information as a salesperson.
It just isn't.
And so what happened is maybe I'll be giving a talk, and I'll see all these people in the room. They're going, "Yep, that's how I buy. I'm not influenced by advertising," which actually they are, but
they are.
if they happen to see it. But I'm a very rational person, and that's not true either. We're emotional animals that occasionally think. We're not thinking animals that are occasionally emotional. Again, I got all the brain science there on my side. But then they'll say, yeah, that's how I do it. I do all my own research. And then I say, okay, and do you think your own customers might be doing that? And then these silent light bulbs start going off over their heads around the room. And they're like, really? I go, I think maybe so. And then usually the people in the room will start saying, yeah, boss, they are. It's changing. It's different. So then they start to realize, oh, it's like those old commercials for Palmolive dishwashing liquid.
Your hands are so soft.
Yeah, well, and the woman is at the manicurist, and she'll say, "Oh, it's really soft. You're soaking in it." That was the punchline from every Palmolive commercial was, "You're soaking in it."
And then she pulls back.
Yeah, she pulls back like, "Oh, really?" Mm-hmm. Well, that's what happens with a lot of these companies. They're going like, "Oh, yeah, you mean like the way I buy my boat or my the lawn care equipment or the whatever, the roofing job or the pool that I want to put in, the way I do that, our customers are doing that." Yeah. And are you meeting them where they are looking for information? No. Well, there's a few ways that you can do that, and could start by just publishing information that a customer might say, "Thanks, that's really helpful. That's really appreciative." Just like the story back to my wife searching for information on how to solve problems related to competing in equestrian sports and keeping these horses healthy.
And it is. It's like, I've got a problem. I'm looking for a solution, and that's really it. That's what we're all about. I remember talking to my daughter real quick, and she just got her master's in marketing. And I said, "What are they teaching you at the university about?" Everybody's streaming now. I stream. I don't even watch commercials. How do you communicate your message? How do you get it out there when I don't even want to watch a commercial? I'll pause my TV and I'm not going to listen to anything. And I won't. And I said, "What do they teach you?" And they haven't. And I said, "The only medium that I know," because I just got done spending a lot of money on, and this was in the past, spent a lot of money on print, is digital, where I can see real-time movement in what's going on. Is my message resonating? I can see it because people are on that. They're looking. And it's just a fascinating time. It's just a fascinating time.
It really is. And it's terrifying to legions or a generation of marketers.
Yes.
And it's funny how there are a lot of marketers that they're just not comfortable being held accountable, kind of like the sales folks have always been. And that's a gripe salespeople have, and it's a valid one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're absolutely spot on. Okay, we're going to have to wrap it up. So, how does the listeners of Industrial Talk Podcast get a hold of you? Because they need to. So, what do we do, Douglas?
Well, I would suggest getting on LinkedIn and finding Douglas Burdett and connecting with me on LinkedIn. And here's why. And I offer this to the listeners of the Marketing Book Podcast, where because I've read so many of these books, which again, I love doing, I want to save other people time. And every day I get these connections and from listeners, and they'll ask me questions like, okay, what's one book I could read about this particular topic? Or here's my situation. I'm the engineer. I was head of production, and now they've suddenly thrown me into sales. Or now I'm in charge of marketing.
Yep.
What would be the first book I could read to start to wrap my head around this, to figure out what's important and what can I ignore and not get overwhelmed by? I love being able to answer, and I can answer that very quickly and say, okay, it's like book prescriptions. And I do that, and I love doing it, and people find it helpful. And I'll even send you a link to an interview with an author where I've done that. And even if it's not a book that I've had on the podcast, I know of resources that I can send you to try to get you up to speed quickly. So on Twitter, I'm Marketing Book, and our website is artillerymarketing.com. And if you want to check out our podcast, you go to marketingbookpodcast.com, and all that does is redirect to that section of our agency website about the podcast. But if I can help folks, please let me help you save time.
So yeah, I'm looking out at your LinkedIn. You got books in it, and you're pretty active on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, I'm active there. I may go to Twitter about 60 seconds a day just to see if
Okay.
somebody's tried to reach out to me. But LinkedIn is great. I'm able to have these great conversations,
Good.
and it really helps me to
Simple.
figure out what kind of books should be coming up on the podcast.
Yeah. That's a
And we've had
simple
some
solution.
we've had some books that have been very specifically helpful for industrial folks too.
Good. See, what fascinates me about this world is the access to information. There's no reason of not knowing. It's out there. Somebody has, cracked it, and it's out there, and it's helpful. And I guess the parting shot is that you industrial companies, industrial professionals need to be a part of that information, that content, and think of the other as opposed to yourself. Always the other focus. I like that. And this is Douglas, so that we got it, Burdett, Burdett, at Artillery Marketing. Douglas, you were fantastic. Loved the conversation.
My pleasure. I hope your listeners found it helpful and that I can maybe help them in the future.
Well, I know that we're talking about the others, but I sure found it helpful.
Oh, good.
It's all
Good.
about me now. No, it's not.
As well it should be.
Darn right, I bought the equipment. Right. Hey, Douglas, thank you very much. And thank you very much for joining the Industrial Talk podcast. We will be right back on the other side, and we're going to once again talk about how to get a hold of Douglas Burdett. Hey, once again, this is Scott McKenzie with Industrial Talk. If you like what you're listening to, please feel free to sign up for the free podcast as well as the blogs. I'll try to keep it all relevant to your business and hopefully be able to provide some insight into what we do at Industrial Talk and what you do as a professional. Hope to see you soon. Thank you. All right, you Industrial Talk listeners out there, that was an incredible interview, chock full of wonderful tactical solutions for you, the industrial professional. That's Douglas Burdett. Find him, seek him out, go to his LinkedIn contact, start there. He's out there, he's responsive, and his website, artillerymarketing.com. You get all the information out there. I highly recommend it because once again, we in the industrial world need to understand how the buyers are buying today because it has changed dramatically. So anyway, thank you very much once again for joining the Industrial Talk podcast. Go out to industrialtalk.com. We've got marketing services out there. We've got programs, classes, you name it, we got it, all geared toward you, the professional. We want to help you any way, shape, or form to be successful because you know why? You're changing the world. You're changing the world through your innovation. You're changing the world through what you are doing. Never forget that. Thank you again. And thank you once again for joining the Industrial Talk podcast. I am honored and just really proud to be a part of the industrial market. So take care, be safe as always, and we'll talk again soon.